Sometimes a patient walks into an audiology clinic and the case just isn't straightforward. It stops being a simple medical test and turns into, well, detective work, a real hearing mystery. So today, we're going to crack the case. Think about this for a second. What if someone genuinely feels they can't hear, it's affecting their whole life, but when you test them, all the physical parts of their ears are working just fine? It's a total paradox, and it's the puzzle we're going to solve today. So here's where it all begins. You have a patient telling their story, describing their struggles with hearing, and you have an audiologist trying to match that story to the hard data. But sometimes, the pieces just don't fit. To get what's going on, you first need to know about the two main types of hearing loss. First, there's organic loss. Think of this as a hardware problem, right? There's actual physical damage to the ear. But then, there's functional loss. This is more of a software problem. The hardware, the physical ear, is totally fine, but something's stopping it from working the way it should. And that's the absolute key here. With functional hearing loss, there's a real disconnect. The patient is truly experiencing hearing difficulty, but the audiologist can't find any physical reason for it. It's often a case where things like intense stress or trauma can actually show up as a physical symptom. So this isn't about someone making it up, it's about finding the real cause behind what they're feeling. So just like any good detective, the audiologist starts looking for clues, and the very first place they look, the standard everyday hearing test. You know the one I'm talking about, right? You sit in the booth, you hear a beep, you press a button. It's a subjective test, meaning it completely depends on your response. The audiologist uses your clicks to map out what you can and can't hear. It's usually super reliable, but it's also where the first cracks in a case like this can start to show. And these are the red flags our audiologist detective is searching for. Maybe the patient doesn't respond to a really loud sound, but a minute later they respond to one that's much quieter. Or maybe the test says they have a severe loss, but they're having a perfectly normal conversation with the audiologist in the room. These little inconsistencies, they're the first big clues that something else is at play. Okay, so once those red flags pop up, it's time to bring out the special toolkit. The audiologist needs to gather objective evidence. We're talking about data that has nothing to do with whether the patient presses a button or not. Right. The whole goal here is to completely bypass the patient's own responses. We need to find a way to measure how the ear and the brain are actually reacting to sound, automatically. This is how the detective can separate the physical reality from what the patient is perceiving. Now, this is where it gets really cool. These are the two most powerful tools in the kit. First up, OAEs. A tiny probe plays a sound into your ear, and get this, if your inner ear hair cells are healthy, they literally create a sound back, an echo. The probe listens for that echo. It's a direct check on the hardware. Then there's the ABR. This uses electrodes to watch the brain's electrical response to sound. It lets us see if the signal is making the journey from the ear all the way up to the brainstem without any problems. All right, we have our subjective clues and our objective evidence. The audiologist is now ready to lay all the pieces on the table and finally solve this puzzle. The investigation is complete. It's time to open up that case file and see exactly what we've found. Okay, clue number 1. The first hearing test, the one where the patient presses the button, shows a really significant hearing loss. But the results were all over the place, and they just didn't match how the patient was actually communicating. That's our first big anomaly. Next up, clue number 2, the objective OAE test. The results? Totally normal. Those little echoes are coming back loud and clear. This tells us the delicate hardware inside the ear is in perfect working order. And here's the final piece of the puzzle, clue number 3, the ABR test. It also came back normal, confirming that the sound signal is traveling flawlessly from the ear right up the nerve to the brain. The pathway is wide open. So let's recap. We have a patient who says they can't hear, but we know their inner ear is physically healthy, and we know the sound signal is definitely getting to their brain. We've eliminated all the physical impossibilities. So, what are we left with?
The verdict is in. The evidence is overwhelming. The diagnosis is functional hearing loss. The mystery is solved. The patient's experience and the physical tests didn't match up because the problem wasn't in the hardware at all.
But getting the diagnosis, that's not the end of the story, not even close. In fact, it's just the beginning of the most important part, helping the patient understand what's really going on. I mean, imagine getting a diagnosis like that. It can be really confusing.
maybe even a little scary. So you might be wondering, what now? What does an audiologist do to help someone whose hearing loss isn't actually coming from their ears?
Well, the focus immediately shifts to compassionate care. It starts with a very careful, non-judgmental explanation. Look, your ears are physically healthy, but what you are experiencing is absolutely real. It often moves into counseling to explore any underlying stress or trauma that might be the root cause. The whole point is to build trust and, if needed, connect the patient with other specialists who can help them tackle the source of the problem.
And this, right here, is the most important takeaway. This whole detective process, it's not about catching a patient or proving them wrong. It's about getting the complete picture so you can offer the right kind of support. It's about solving the puzzle to find the absolute best way to help.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty deep question to think about. It's an amazing reminder of that powerful and sometimes really mysterious connection between our minds and our bodies. Thanks so much for joining me.